Good evening, everyone. My name is Yak Chin, and I will be your host for tonight. On behalf of the JPO family, we'd like to extend a warm welcome to everyone tuning in for tonight's broadcast. We hope that everyone is doing well and staying safe indoors. A friendly reminder to maintain good hygiene at all times and maintain social distancing when heading out. As we'd like to continue improving your experience with us, please help us achieve this by completing the poll that will be published during the broadcast. If you have any questions, please feel free to type them in the Q&A section down below. To anyone who is interested in sharing tonight's broadcast, a live feed will be shared on the JPO Facebook page, and a recording of the webinar will also be uploaded on the page. A bit of guest intro. Tonight's seminar features Mark with his topic being playing period oboes. As our JPO family attendees are mostly students ranging from primary school to college, their parents and their teachers, the sharing of knowledge and advice you have for all of us is invaluable and greatly appreciated. The JPO is very honored to have Mark join in as our guest for tonight. So, Mark Radcliffe studied at Royal Academy of Music in London with Yatling. He has always been particularly interested in exploring the aesthetic of playing music from different periods of time. Earlier on in his career, he specialized in new music, giving recitals worldwide of pieces by Berio, Takahashi, and Lutosławski, amongst others, and commissions from British composers, including Anthony Powers, Edwin Roxburgh, and Rachel Stott. Most of his playing has, however, been as an orchestral player with period instrument orchestras, including Academy of Ancient Music, English Baroque soloist, Gabrieli players, and English concert. Playing music from Purcell to Stravinsky, as well as principal oboe with English touring opera on both modern and period oboes, playing operas from Handel to Janacek. Mark enjoys teaching at various schools, including Westminster School in central London. Now let us welcome Mark Radcliffe. Hello, Mark.
Hello, nice to see you.
Yes, so how are you?
I'm really well, I'm fine, yes, I'm in England.
Yeah. So where are you? Are you in London?
Yeah, at the moment actually I'm in Birmingham, but I was in London this morning.
Okay. Okay, so Mark, can you talk a little bit about the video that we watched at the beginning of the broadcast?
Yeah, I was miming along to a recording that I made with the orchestra called Academy of Ancient Music. We made it in what was the anniversary year for Bach, year 2000. There was lots of concerts of Bach, and we made this recording. Some really good singers like Susan Gritton, you heard, and Michael George called, and it was in Cambridge, in the chapel of King's College in Cambridge, is the main big chapel in the middle of Cambridge. It's got a very nice acoustic, quite churchy acoustic, but nice to play in. And this was me playing some obligatos from some arias from some cantatas by Bach. That I was playing on Baroque oboe, on copies of instruments from around 1720 or stuff like that. The first one I was actually playing that was an oboe d'amore, which it's like the standard oboe, but it's slightly longer. You can see with a pear-shaped bell, and it plays a minor third lower, so it's in A instead of C. You get an A 3 notes lower, and it just has a slightly different sound. And the second one was the standard C oboe, Baroque oboe. And it's nice playing Bach because you get to swap between instruments. It's those two oboes, and then the other one, I don't know, Benjamin, it's maybe if you could move forward the slides a bit. Well, no, don't worry about it. I'll show you my, yeah, that's the copy of that's the Bach Magnificat recording that you just heard. And this is actually an oboe da caccia. It's like a bendy oboe, and then at the bottom it's got this brass bell, and it's actually inside. It's made out of maple wood, but they make little cuts in the wood to bend it like this, and then they cover it in leather, and it's what later it became known as the cor anglais, which is it's another kind of oboe, and it's an F oboe, so it's basically 5 notes down from the. I'll play a recording of me playing it later on. And anyway, so this was playing some Bach. Maybe Benjamin, can you move down the slides to the next one? And this is what it's going to be. This is another thing I did in this series of Bach cantatas with John Eliot Gardner. It's on English Baroque Soloists is the name of the group, and I did, and it was the whole year, like every other week. We go to different places that Bach had been, mostly in Germany, or sometimes it was other places, and play all of his cantatas. It's more than 200, all throughout the year. And Benjamin, can you move down one more slide? It explains a bit about the project. Yeah, this Bach cantata pilgrimage, which was it was a celebration with this orchestra of all of Bach's cantatas. Yeah, it just says a few things about it there. But so because playing oboe, Bach is one of the composers who's got most oboe music. It's full of Bach obbligati solos, often with singers, and it really fits in. It's a nice instrument for playing with singers, particularly soprano, I'd say, just because it's quite close to the voice and it's got a pure sound. And then I could say a few more things about what a Baroque oboe is like compared to a modern oboe. I'll just show you. This is well, you saw it a bit, but it's made out of, I'm bad at using this. It's made out of boxwood instead of the blackwood that a modern oboe is made out of. And there's hardly any keys on it, little metal things compared to a modern oboe. This you can see just a few down here. Otherwise, you have to use fingerings, a bit like a recorder, cross fingerings. And this gives it, using these fingerings means that you're really aware of things like what key you're in, because whereas on a modern instrument, you might just be playing in all kinds of sharps and flats, and you don't notice that much difference. On this, once it starts getting to 3 or 4 flats or sharps, you start saying, hey, wait a minute, oh my God, you know, you have to really, it makes a big difference. And lots of the more remote notes, like a B flat or an F sharp or an F even, or weaker than say a D or an A, which are strong. So that it makes, so you really start to hear that playing in D major is much brighter than playing in B flat major or something, because you're using much more the bright notes of the instrument. So you get that, and it's really nice that you have to swap often in Bach between the 3 kinds of oboes. So it gives you lots of different colors. You're going from one instrument to the other, not within a movement usually, but from one movement to another. And it also makes it possible to play in all different kinds of keys, like the strings will be playing in a lot of flats. But if you're playing on d'amore, for example, the strings will be playing in A major. On on an oboe wise. It's as if you were playing in C major. So it makes that possible, but it's that's the reason that you get all these instruments, as well as making all different kinds of sounds and colors. So yeah, that's a beginning of playing on period instruments, I thought, because the Baroque oboe, the oboe really starts in like 1680s or something. The earliest composers writing for oboe are like Purcell, or in France, Lully. It started off as a outdoor instrument, playing in oboe bands, like whole massive oboes and bassoons, double reed bands, playing at the court of Louis XIV in Paris, in Versailles, in the palace. So that's when the oboe starts. Before that, it was more like shawms, a different kind of instrument. And then you get lots of oboe and Baroque music, lots and lots in Bach and Handel and stuff like that. And it's been nice that I've been playing lots of that kind of music with these orchestras that I play with, some like Academy of Ancient Music. Christopher Hogwood was the conductor, and now it's changed. He died. But English Baroque soloists and Gabrieli players, Paul McCreish. The orchestras have made a lot of recordings in the 1980s or 1990s particularly, and that's then made them very popular because people wanted to listen to instrument pieces, familiar pieces played on older on different instruments, instruments of the period. I know you had some questions for me, but I'm sort of talking a lot about all the things already. I'm just talking about it because you were going to ask me about playing Bach on period overs. I've talked.
Yeah, maybe can you show us like what oboes you use for playing Bach?
Yeah, I'll show you. And then there's also, this is the oboe d'amore, the one that you saw. It looks pretty similar to the, except the bell is a different size, and it's got a slightly different sound. Maybe Benjamin, could you play that extract from the Christmas oratorio? It's from YouTube. It's got two oboe d'amore, and it's got two oboe da caccia. You hear them coming in about a minute after the end. And it's that was actually from the end of the piece, but you could hear a bit there at the end, the four oboes playing together, and the quite rich, deep sound of the lower oboes all playing together. Two oboe da caccias in that. Yeah, that's a bit about Bach. And then what else were you going to ask me?
So how does it compare playing music on period and modern instruments?
Yeah, that's right. That's quite an interesting question. I apart from some of the things I was saying, like every oboe has got a slightly different feature. Like the Baroque oboes, one of the big differences I find is it's mellower sound. and because it's a slightly bigger bore, and it really makes a difference. It's more blendy, and it's not made for projecting the way that the later oboes, which were used in big orchestras, were really made to get a stronger, clearer sound. You get less clarity in the sound, but when you say you're playing something in unison with violins, it really blends nice. So much, it's easier to get a blended sound that sounds in tune, even that's in tune, and even with other oboes, often just very blended sound, which makes it, and also it's actually less tiring than playing the modern oboe, because you don't have to blow so hard. And Baroque music, often I find, is really quite a lot of blowing, a lot long, whereas in later music, in orchestral at least, often you get more rest periods in it, and it's so it's good for that. And then also there's the question of I think a question you were going to ask me next about style, also how you can adapt different styles of playing, and I mean, what people often in the past have looked into some manuals and from the time that tell you some things, but actually it's very difficult. When you talk about music, you can say, oh, play it like this, play it like that, and then you tell it to different people, and you will get quite a different result, because it's eventually it's about, so there's certain things I think that if you're playing in an orchestra, that you try and do. For example, maybe playing with less vibrato, or playing with more, or just doing what the instrument suggests to you. Like the violin bows are much lighter, so that they play much more off the bow, less bow, and then you try and come up with something which sounds good and appropriate to the music. But I mean, that can mean a lot of things. But I think certain things like playing lighter and those things I'm talking about, just incorporating that gives it a certain sound. And I think in England a lot actually has come from the sound that certain choirs were making, like the ones that sing at King's College and in Cambridge. And there's a particular kind of sound of the English choir. And I think some of that tradition has come into playing Baroque music and particularly Baroque music and earlier music, Renaissance music. But then it's been really interesting playing later music, like going on to Mozart and Beethoven and playing that on period instruments. I'll show you a classical oboe one. This one is from 1809. I mean, it's a copy, because the woodwind instruments don't last so long, so they're better on copies. And can you see now it's getting a few keys. This octave key makes a big difference. This means that to play up the octave, you can press this key and the note comes immediately, and you don't have to make much adjustment in your mouth in the way that you do for the Baroque oboe, where there's no octave key. So I'm just doing it by supporting more and adjusting the mouth shape. Which means you can go up and down the octave much more, and you can be more fixed, and the notes are more equal, because that, like a G sharp, it opens a hole just in the right place for giving it a resonant G sharp, whereas on the Baroque oboe you have to half hole, which gives you a muffly G sharp, or it's slightly different. So it's very much about giving you an equal scale. And this is excellent oboe for playing Beethoven. Actually, this one is 17. It's perfect, and it's actually extremely resonant. It's really small here, small bore, which makes it really, really pingy and really good for a bigger orchestra. And also another really interesting thing, I know you were going to ask me what it's like about playing different pitches. Sorry, I'm just talking, but it's nice to,
Yeah.
it is that this oboe wants to play at a higher pitch. So, I mean, usually now orchestras play, period instrument orchestra play classical music where the A is at 430, which is halfway between a modern G sharp and A, what you would usually get in an orchestra playing on modern instruments would play slightly higher pitch. But so this is halfway between a Baroque pitch, because that Baroque oboe I was playing before, the A is like a G sharp on a modern piano.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so that makes a difference. It gives this brighter sound, as well as the keys, and all giving you different kind of. So so that's using classical oboe, and it's been interesting also playing at different pitches, even Baroque music. I've been doing some projects where the whole orchestra was playing even a semitone lower, so it's 392, so the A is like a G on a modern piano, and we played Bach and Purcell trying it at that pitch, and it makes a big difference. It's really, I mean, I like it a lot. It's really soft and mellow, but it's quite unclear, quite hard to tune, but you have, for the string instruments can just tune down, but the wind instruments have to get new instruments made, and they're slightly bigger. And it's really interesting that the oboe gets softer, that the flute gets louder if you make a bigger flute. And it's really nice together. Flute and oboe start to really blend nicely, and it becomes a different relationship there. So that's really interesting. You can listen to some recordings at 392, which is nice. And then you know, playing later music, pitch, we tend to just use the higher pitch. I mean, in old time, in Baroque times, I think that in different countries, in different towns, because the world was much less connected then, people would be playing at different pitches. Even in Bach time, you get some cantatas where the parts, the old surviving parts, are in different keys, and I think that was to do with, they're transposed, and I think it's to do with this, that certain towns had instruments in different pitches, and then so the parts would be transposed and people would be playing in different keys even, and so that's quite an interesting thing. I mean, it could be problematic, but as I say, it's quite nice. It gives, if you try different instruments in different pitches, it gives lots of new sounds there, and it's interesting. And then as you go forward, playing romantic music, I mean, playing Schumann and Mendelssohn, and then one tends to play it now at a higher pitch, A440, and then I've even played some early 20th century music, some Stravinsky on a 1920s oboe, and there it becomes less different to what a modern oboe sounds like, and so it's slightly different, but then it's interesting. You can start listening to recordings, because there are some recordings coming in of early 20th century recordings, and thinking about the different ways of playing there and the different sounds, and you realize actually that there are lots of different ways of playing, even though most recordings will sound a particular way, I don't know, with some sliding maybe, or some actually not much vibrato in lots of those recordings, and then you realize some 1960s recordings, actually some of them sound quite similar to period instruments recordings, and other ones don't, sound totally different, where they're playing very slow and with lots of vibrato. So there's lots of things to think about, but yeah, it's all things that come in into, yeah. What else were you going to ask me, Yatsin, further on?
So do musicians play both modern and period instruments?
Oh yeah, that's an interesting question because in Europe, where I've been doing, people now actually, I find modern younger people tend now to play both. But it used to be more that, especially woodwind players, that tend to play not mix much, which I think is a pity because it's just nice to be playing music from all periods and in different ways. But now I find lots of students are playing both kind of instruments, which is, for me, is nice. It's nice to try different things, and I think there is a limit to how much you can change how you play and what you really feel is your way of playing. And also within an orchestra, it's nice to try different things, but also it's nice to be speaking a common language and have a common way of playing. So it's about getting a balance of these things, I think. I don't know. Do any of people young people play on period instruments and modern, or is it not so much in Singapore? Yapchin, I was wondering.
Maybe not so much in my school. I haven't seen anyone play period instrument in my school yet, except for the brass instruments. Yeah, but
the brass players. Yeah. In
yeah.
England too, the brass players they've always played both. Yeah, I don't know why. It's an interesting thing. But maybe it's less differences, but it's quite different actually. Natural instruments are you have to work at them quite hard to get them to work. Yeah, it's interesting that, isn't it? Yeah. And, so
okay.
What else were you going to ask? Yeah.
So have you played any new music on baroque instruments?
Oh yeah, I've done a few things, a few projects. Again, with Academy of Ancient Music, we did a project where there were some commissions from new composers, John Woolrich, somebody called, and with another group I play with called Ex Cathedra's, a very nice choir in Birmingham actually, and they work with a composer, the living composer who's producing music that we play on period instruments, and it's been interesting actually. Some of them I find it's because this composer, he writes actually quite simple music. I mean, it's beautiful music, but it's quite simple, called Alec Ross in a way. It's sort of that works well on period instruments because they can't, well, the woodwind instruments, they can't go as fast jumping up and down and they can't, and it's really pushing it if you go into certain sharpie and flatty keys, they don't work so well. So that in a way the simpler music works really well. But it's been interesting, and there's some more instruments in more of a avant-garde style, or whatever you call it, that I've done also. This that's worked quite well, and it's and the best piece I think was by Rachel Stott. She actually wrote just a solo piece for me to play, and she was using quite a lot of quarter tones, just slow quarter tones, and actually that worked really well on Barocco with certain fingerings. If you don't do the half holes and just put it down, you get really precise quarter tones and on a few notes, and that worked really well. It was a nice piece to play.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, I'll listen to it if I have time.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah. Okay, so what is your view or any advice for JPO on what they are doing, like normal orchestra activities, teaching outreach, music exam board, and this broadcast program?
Yeah, I think it's great. I've heard a lot about JPO, that they're doing this outreach program, and that they're doing some stuff in Indonesia and Batam Islands, and it's great that I think I do a lot of teaching in London, and I really enjoy it, and I think for children music can be nice, and playing instruments, just the practical, doing something practical, but that also involves music, which is something that appeals to a different part of your person than speaking, and it's just a different way of expressing yourself. And also, it's really nice. Music is a nice thing to do in a community, to do together. You know, play in groups. It's a great way to learn how to be in groups and to have fun together, whilst really testing your skills. And so I think it's something. It's really nice to hear that JPO are doing stuff in all kinds of projects with children, and also in quite some poorer communities. I've heard that they're doing some nice things. So that sounds like a really nice thing, as well as I think they're doing some nice concerts in KK. Is that right?
Yeah.
I've heard that. Yeah, so it's nice for the community there also. They've got lots going on. It's really busy. If you look into their website, you'll see millions of things. Yatling is so busy. He's got so much energy for organizing things. So it's really great that these things are happening.
Yeah. Okay. So now let's move on to the Q&A.
Oh yeah, I'll have a look if there's anything.
Okay, so from Anonymous, is the techniques required for different oboes varied a lot? And do you need a lot of time to master each of them?
Yeah, I think on oboe, yes, it takes, because I started playing on normal modern oboe, and then Baroque oboe is really quite different compared to other instruments. Just to get it to work, oboe is a hard instrument to get it to work, whereas some other instruments, just the initial, and there's all the reeds thing. The reeds, they're pretty similar to the modern oboe reed, except they're just wider, slightly fatter. That to an oboist, that will mean something like that. And you have to put it on it's got a longer staple here. So you need to get all that right. And then, the blowing is really quite different. The fingering is different. And the main thing is it's a more relaxed mouth position. And you need to have some flexibility in making space in the back of the mouth, and so that you're changing octaves. For the upper octave, you slightly more close at the back of the mouth and more supports. It's nice. It's really close to singing. I mean, modern oboe is too, but you change your mouth shape, I find, for high notes and low notes, in the way a singer does, more upper palate and then or E like this, a little bit in the back of the mouth, and slightly more relaxed mouth. Somehow the lower pitch instruments you can relax, but it takes quite a lot of getting used to. But some people are good. I mean, some people can pick it up quite quick, but oboe is quite a lot. I think maybe that's why there hasn't been, oboe players have tended not to mix modern oboe and Baroque oboe, but now there are quite a lot. I know some really good players who do both at top level orchestras. The guy who plays an orchestra of the Age Enlightenment it's quite a big orchestra that does lots of period instrument stuff. He also plays I forgot what Philharmonia, all the big London orchestras. I don't think he does LSO, but Philharmonia, LPO, he does both. So he's good. So I think it's a nice thing. It's quite a lot of work on Baroque, but it's doable. Yeah.
Okay, so next one from another person. What would you say the demand for period instruments like oboes in UK compared to the rest of the world? Are they pricey?
Is that pricey to buy the instrument or the
I think it's the
pricey,
instrument. Yeah, I think it's the
or
instrument.
does it pay well? I don't. Yeah. Those orchestras to buy the instrument is not really expensive compared to modern. It's about 1,000 GB pounds for a Baroque oboe. It's really not, compared to some instruments. I think it's not bad. And the classical ones, little bit more, you know, a few hundred more maybe, but it's not bad. And so it's still quite, it has been, I think the period instrument orchestras are, there's less people who do it, but there's been quite a good demand for it, and because they're small orchestras, some of them are smaller orchestras, they've managed to get in the past quite a lot of tours where they're quite popular, because I think they can get because there's less people maybe, but I'm not quite sure about that, but they've been quite well paid orchestras if you're looking to pay it. On the whole, it's quite it tends to pay a little bit better than the modern orchestras playing on those, and yeah.
Okay, next one. So, hi Mark, what makes you interested in period music instruments?
Well, I like it. I like the aesthetic. I happen to like Baroque oboes because they're mellow. I like the mellowness, and I think they're quite characterful somehow. I like the character of it. I think that's, and I suppose I've liked some of the recordings that have come out, that were coming out. You know, when I was a student, I was interested in the sound of these orchestras, and also I like the music of Bach, and there's lots of nice, great music to play by Bach, which is great, which is nice. Yeah, those things.
Okay, next one. Compared to mainstream classical music, are there demand in period instruments, and is it very competitive to find opportunities to perform and teach?
Yeah, I think everything's quite competitive nowadays. But as I say, it used to be when I think there's a bit more space for it than in the mainstream orchestras in Europe, at least. I think it's. I was doing teaching on a course in Brazil last year, and there was quite a lot of people, Brazilians, who play period instruments or who wanted to learn, or some of them lots of them had been living in Germany and studied there, but they decided that they wanted life in Brazil and wanted to live back at their home country, and were very keen to set things up there. But I think this could be happening in other parts of the world, I'm not sure, but I think it's possible to do it. But in Europe, there's much more, there's more going on, and period instrument orchestras, there's a bit more need. Yeah, I think if you can get in there, you have to find a way into these things, but then there is a bit more, there's more opportunities. Yeah. It's still quite competitive. It's difficult as yeah, but it's possible. Yeah.
Okay, next one. I am curious about the different key system of the modern day oboes. Would you like to share something on that? And maybe you can also tell us the inception of the modern oboes.
Yeah, it's interesting that the keys, I didn't really go much forward of it. I showed you I went up to the 8th key oboe, which is 1709 one that I've got. They start getting, here we go, I got it. It starts getting, the octave key, I said, is maybe the main difference. This octave key you can see there. And then it's got a G sharp key. This is a B flat key, so you play an A and then you add that. And this is a side E flat key. It's got left hand E flat as well as the normal E flat here. C key, C sharp key, an F key, gives you a straight Baroque oboe is always fork F, but on this. So that's how the keys start coming in. You do get some classical oboes, and they're great for playing early Mozart, particularly. And Mozart still got 2 keys, but it's just they've got a much thinner bore, so they actually don't work very. They're quite hard to get reliable, those ones. But so it's like an instrument in transition. But and then after that, you start getting different kinds of key systems, like in the 1850s and onwards, and you get German and French style and all. Yeah, the oboe either goes German or French, basically, slightly different key systems, and it's quite, when you start learning those, you can get really confused, and you have to do a live concert or something. You think, oh, you know, there's lots of different, oh my God, you can start getting really confused with your fingerings. Yeah, that's been interesting. I mean, when I first was using this 8-keyed oboe, I'd done a lot of Baroque oboe playing, but I hadn't done much 8-keyed oboe, and it's quite hard starting when, you know, you'd have to play live gigs, and if you're a bit tired or something, and you think, oh God, what fingering for this note suddenly, you know, because quite a lot of notes start getting different. It can be hard. So, but then it took me about well, it's quite a lot. So it's hard to say in time, but maybe quite a few gigs before suddenly it was in my system that I could just pick up this instrument, and I just knew where to pitch the notes and finger them. You know, it takes quite a lot of time. But so I actually, and then I haven't done, I confess, I haven't done much playing of later 19th century music. I mean, when I played Stravinsky on early 20th century, it's similar enough to my modern oboe, which is that it's not too hard. So that's all easy. Yeah, then you sort of start relating it. Even this 8-keyed oboe, it's helpful. I'd had some colleagues who didn't play modern oboe and played Baroque oboe, but they come from the recorder. They used to play recording, and then they picked up Baroque oboe. And for them, it's really quite hard to start playing with all the keyed oboes. Whereas if you come, then you start thinking in terms of a modern oboe, you know, from the 19th century oboes, when you start getting all these keys, and you think, oh yeah, it's basically a modern oboe fingering with a few little different things. And it's just getting the transition from thinking, oh, it's basically a Baroque oboe with a few different fingerings. But actually, you know, it's easier thinking from the modern oboe once you start getting the keys, because I found that. Whereas Baroque instruments really quite different, and you're just using the really quite different fingerings, and you're using a different mouth technique. So yeah, that octave key makes a big difference.
Okay, last question. So, asking as an amateur oboist who has never seen the period instrument, may I know, are there any differences in reeds for different oboes? And I presume one also need to learn to make them.
Yeah, exactly. I talked a bit about that. Like, this is a Baroque reed. It's just slightly wider. This is my classical reed. It's pretty similar to a modern reed, isn't it? This was my D'Amore reed, again a bit bigger. And then the oboe da caccia reed, what I use for my oboe da caccia, sorry, I forgot my reeds, I haven't got them with me, the da caccia ones, but it's the old cor anglais, the oboe da caccia. The one is, I actually just cut down a bassoon reed, a modern bassoon reed, and then I make it slightly narrower, and I put that on, and it actually works really well. But yeah, it's difficult. You just need to get the right setup, and you need to get an instrument that works, and you need to get the right tube for it, the little tube that you put on the bottom of the oboe. You need some help with that. Often an instrument maker, because all the the best way to get an instrument is ask a maker to make you one, or you can buy it if someone's selling one. But there's a few makers in Europe who make really nice instruments that work well, and they can send you a reed with it, you know, that shows you the exact proportions. It's so important. Otherwise, it gives you a headache. If the setup isn't right, it's not going to work, and then you don't, you haven't got much of a chance. So you need to get the right reed and the right tube, which an instrument maker can show you exactly the right one. And then it's a lot of reed making, and you can't. There are some people who make reeds, and if you want, I've got a few names of people who make nice reeds for period instruments. Not many people, but there are some online. Maybe you've seen online, or there's some people that I know in I don't know, for example, in England. But that reed thing's always a big issue. But I think if you can get a nice reed and then maybe copy it if you make your own reeds, and just know what staple to tie it on, what tube to tie it on to, and what tube works with the instrument that you've got, then it's just making reeds like the modern ones. You know how to do it.
Okay. So okay, before we end this program, on behalf of JPO, we would like to thank all of you for dedicating your time and energy into this interview despite the pandemic that is happening right now. We would also like to thank everyone who has attended and supported this program. You guys have been great. I hope you guys got the answer you wanted. So this broadcast will be on every Wednesday and Sunday night at the same time until further notice. And now I will end with prayer. So please pray in whatever faith you believe in for the COVID-19. Let us pray. Dear Lord, thank you for giving us the opportunity to come together, continue running this program at a moment like this. I want to pray for the nurse and doctors from around the world who has been constantly treating patients with COVID-19, and I hope people who are diagnosed with COVID-19 will get better soon. Lastly, I pray for our safety and health, and may in the future there be peace within. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Okay, so thank you everyone for tuning in, and also thank you, Mark, for taking your time. To share your story.
Thank you, Jean.
Thank you. So see you all next time. So bye.
Bye.
Good night.